But let's transition and talk very, very quickly upon on They Shall Not Grow Old.
Oh man.
Um, because we
Okay.
still have to get to the American Beauty review. So
Right.
really
So
quickly,
I'm going to say a couple things about They Shall Not Grow Old. I think it's out of theaters now, but if and I assume it will come out on DVD or Blu-ray in the near future, or even possibly through whatever streaming sites or whatever. Yeah, I believe it's a must-watch. Now, for those of you who are not necessarily, and these are Peter Jackson's own his own words, kind of in the documentary, where he says, I made this not as is more of it's not an academic documentary, but it's for it's history for non-history buffs, and you kind of get kind of the everyday story of English soldiers on the Western Front and what they dealt with from getting enlisting into the military and throughout the war, and what they and the after effects of the war on them. Um, and it was just really really well done. It's kind of a new way to see all the old 100-year footage, and I'll be honest, like I didn't know. I mean, I knew a little, obviously enough about World War One and the effects of what it played on the world. But it's kind of a nice to hear from those guys, from all those survivors of the war, their own words, their perspective, and it made me want to learn more about the war, because this is the war that changed the world for the worse. And I think we're still reaping the sorrow and from the events of this war. And I've mentioned to you and a few others that there's a really great kind of video or documentary series of short, like 10-minute videos, for kind of covering every week of the war and like what was going on. It's called The Great War. It's on YouTube, and I'm learning so much just in like those the short videos I've watched so far. I highly encourage people to go and watch it. I think this is something that we should all kind of look back and learn about.
right? Yeah, I agree. This was a really well done and well produced a documentary for people who aren't historians or who are kind of like history buffs. This is, and I think this particular part I think was great because it just gave the kind of day to day of like the average soldier fighting, and just like the kind of the camaraderie that develops between soldiers. Not even like soldiers fighting on the same side, but because it told the story of when they would take prisoners and how they were still kind of this respect, and kind of and this friendliness between English and German soldiers, at
And
least
so
the prisoners of war.
I want to interject one last thing. Sorry, Andy.
Okay.
And to me, like just based off of like what you're saying there too, to me, that's what history is. It's about the stories. It's not. I mean, yeah, there's names, places, and dates. Those are important too, but it's the stories that make history what it should be.
Right, and just precisely, it's the stories. It's the stories of of the men like freezing their asses off in the trenches, having to deal with all manners of you know nuisances uh, and discomfort, and also what's the word I'm looking for? I guess scorn from even their own people. Because one of the things that was surprising to me was just because in the movie they have like the audio interviews from World War I veterans, and they're just talking about how how poorly they were received after the war was over by the people back at home, and they're kind of looked down on, and kind of similarly to veterans of Vietnam here in America, and so because because we all think of I mean whether or not you're aware of it, but you have certain ideas of what World War I was about, or what exactly it was about. But kind of hearing it from the soldiers themselves, you definitely get a new perspective. And I echo Robert in saying that you should go watch this. Um, what just to hear the stories from the men themselves, who lived through it.
Yeah, it was very like that was kind of the thing that I really was kind of shocking to me is how terribly they were treated after the war was over, and like how they left their jobs to go because they felt it was important to go and serve their country, because they didn't want to be seen as like weak wombly men. And so they went off, like, I mean, they were even lying about their age to make sure that they were able to enlist in the war. That's how much they cared. And when they would get back, the people, like a lot of the employers, kind of gave their jobs away. And when they would go back home to find work, they were saying, "Yeah, if you were a soldier, we don't want you."
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah, because one of the
I
things
mean,
that
they weren't
they
necessarily like there wasn't like protests in the streets or they weren't getting spit on, but they were treated pretty much just as terribly as the Vietnam
right.
vets.
Yeah, there was definitely a scorn to anyone who had fought in the war, who had served, and yeah, like one of the things, like what you were mentioning about employers not hiring these men back, but they're sometimes when they did have like the wanted sign, they said veterans need not apply.
Yeah. The crazy thing is too, and this is from a quote unquote winning side of the war with the English. In some cases with like Germany, they had no money, so there was no job.
Right.
Then you also had a few other nations that just ceased to exist. So there was nothing to go back to if there was any people at all. The with the in Russia, there was end up they ended up having to deal with the Red Revolution. The Austro-Hungarian Empire ceased to exist. The Ottoman Empire ceased to exist. Germany was utterly everything was they were the scapegoat. It's crazy how it all played out.
Right. So yeah, you heard from us. You get this. We shall not grow old. Has the Jerks seal of approval. So do make sure to watch it, find it. I don't advocate it, but if you can, pirate it. I mean that's how important I think it is for people to watch this documentary. So if you do,
I think it's a must watch. You got to
yes,
watch it.
yes.